And my name is Jaspal Singh. I'm an assistant professor of sociolinguistics here at the School of English. And today I would like to talk to you about a question that has always followed me as long as I've been I guess I've been your age. I've been just coming out of school. I was so fascinated with language and the power language has or had on my life and the power I recognize it had on other people's lives as well. And I asked myself the question, what is there in life that is not language? Maybe not exactly in this form, but something along these lines. And I started to study linguistics and language. And the more I studied, the more I was convinced, the more evidence I found that there is not much in life that is not language. But perhaps you can help me today and find areas in life where you think maybe, oh, there's nothing to do with language. I can't see them, but maybe I'm just biased. So if you look at this beautiful picture or this moving image that I selected here as my background, and I ask you, has that got anything to do with language? And most people will say, no, it's just a field of wheat. What has it got to do with language? There's nothing linguistic about it. But of course, we have to recognize that the existence of this field of wheat is fundamentally linguistic. It is in some ways part of a larger social system of agriculture. Someone has bought the land. Someone has signed a contract to buy the land. Someone has bought seeds, planted the seeds, watered the fields. A farmer is there constantly checking the quality of the wheat, checking the weather, checking the price of the wheat in the market. After all, agriculture is a business, it is an enterprise. Then there will be harvest time and people will come together and there will be tractors and there will be harvesting machines and there will be trucks, there will be packaging, there will be advertisement, there will be marketing, there will be PR, there will be financial transactions, there will be paying of taxes and many, many, many other things. But even if we forget for the moment the business side of this field, if you encounter these beautiful, this beautiful scenery with the wind blowing into the field, you might get emotional, you might get sentimental. There might be some feelings that will be triggered. Maybe you will remember a friend, a lover, or a family member who has passed away. Or you reminisce over your own life, your own past, your future, and perhaps your present moment. You start to meditate. All these things to me are linguistic. We think in language. We think our future, we envision our future in linguistic terms. We make a plan about our future. Where should I study? What should I study? We look at brochures, we listen to talks, we talk to our parents. All these things ultimately, for me, are linguistic. So let's just go and look at a couple of kind of facts so that we are all on the same page. There are approximately 7,000 languages spoken in the world today. That is a very low number compared to the number of languages that existed maybe 100 years ago. Every year, approximately 50 languages die out. That means that they stop being spoken and used. Now, if you count that down to the week, then every 2 weeks a language will die. Now, linguists have a very, very important role here to play, namely, they can help governments to revitalize languages. Out of these 7,000 languages, 23 languages are very, very popular, and they are spoken by almost half of the world's population. And I'm giving you here a couple of numbers of estimated speakers of these 23 most popular languages. You can have a look yourself on the website ethnologue.com if you like to. What is a language then? Let me try and define what a language is. A language is an arbitrary, that is a random, and that's quite important, a random system of signs used for giving meaning to ideas and emotions. Okay, so it's got to do something with signs and meanings. Okay, the fact that the relationship between signs and meaning is arbitrary or random means that anything could act as a sign, literally anything. There is no logic connection between a sign and its meaning. And that, I think, means to me as well that because anything could be a sign, then everything is language, perhaps. Let's look at an example. Let's look at the system of personal pronouns. And that is a phenomenon, a grammatical phenomenon that we find across all languages. And if we look and compare, then most languages will have sort of 6 items here. One for I, one for you, one for he, she, it, one for us, one for you, and one for they, right? And we can see that when we look at the 6 languages that I've listed here, that the signs used to mean any of those things are completely different. They're different sounds, but they're also written in different scripts. So that shows really that we could select any sign to mean whatever the speech community or the culture designates this sign to mean. There's a random, it's a sort of arbitrary relationship between signs and meanings. In Anya's talk, we heard that an outdated or an old-fashioned version of you is ye. In Middle English or in a kind of early modern English. So we can see also that changes. The signs we use for particular things, to mean particular things, changes over time, not only changes over or across cultures. If we look at ancient hieroglyphics, then we can see that, of course, what these signs mean is not what they seem to mean. So this text on the right-hand side is not about eyes and birds and whatever else you might see in the signs, but these signs mean particular words, right? So on the left-hand side over here, you can see a translation of hieroglyphics into English. And if you're interested in this kind of study, then historical linguistics or linguistic archaeology will allow you to understand more about ancient cultures and ancient writing systems, for instance. But even in contemporary times, we have sort of languages, sign systems all around us. Think of the common traffic signs that we see every day when we go out on the streets. And we can see, of course, there are resemblances of these signs across countries, but there will also be slight differences. Again, emphasizing the arbitrariness, the randomness of the sign and its meaning. But also when we go online and we chat, then we use a lot of emojis, right? Or emoticons in our digital vernaculars. And people will use these in slightly different ways. And sometimes when you maybe send an emoji to your grandmother or to your grandfather, they will maybe not quite understand what is exactly going on with these emojis, what they mean. Okay, so we can see that people will have different ideas and will have different understandings of what these signs mean. But languages are not only sort of like written, but they can also be signed. In deaf cultures, people who are hard of hearing or who cannot hear, they make use of their fingers as well as their bodies to sign and therefore to communicate with each other. In a city like Hong Kong, of course, language is almost overflowing. There's so much language around us. And not only one language, of course, but many languages come together in a global city like Hong Kong. And when we look at the linguistic landscapes of Hong Kong and similar metropolises, we will find that many, many languages come together in very creative and interesting ways. Linguistics has traditionally looked mostly at speech, that is, at speech production and as speech perceptions. So linguists have looked at how humans produce sounds with their vocal tracts and what the qualities of the actual sound wave are, what the speech perception is, how the ear operates, and how as well the brain operates and processes speech production as well as speech perception. And that has large implications, of course, on clinical linguistics as well as on speech therapy. But language is not only written and spoken, but it is also embodied. If you think of hand gestures or eye gaze or the movement of eyebrows, the way we move our bodies and the way we move our mouth and our hands and our smile, all these things contextualize what we say. They create meaning around our words. Our words are not enough. The signs of our spoken language might not be enough. What we really need is body language. And now I'm just noticing that am I back? Okay, I just froze, I think. Okay, here we go. So linguistics then is the scientific study of all aspects of language and communication. Linguistics is not necessarily about speaking many languages. It is rather an analysis of signs, words, sentences, and texts and their meanings. It can also be an analysis of spoken signs and in interaction. And it is very importantly an analysis of both the meanings intended by the speaker or the writer and the meanings understood by the listener and the reader. In other words, it is an analysis of language in its social context or text in context. Now, in preparation for this talk, I kind of made a little diary yesterday and kind of thought about what I did. So I got up in the morning yesterday and I checked my phone instantly. Instantly, there was language. There was so much language. For 5 minutes, I was scrolling through my Facebook and my Instagram and all that. There was so much language intake in the first 5 minutes of me being awake yesterday morning. I went downstairs, I made some coffee while I was thinking about all sorts of things. I turned on the radio, I drank my coffee, I had a chat with my partner, I looked at some more Facebook messages, I went to the shop, I had a chat with the shopkeeper, I came back, I spoke to my neighbor, I made some food, I read the newspaper while I was listening to the radio and checking my phone. I listened to some music, I had some food, I had a nap, and I dreamt through language. I read a book, or parts of a book. I answered some Instagram messages. I talked to my mom on the phone. I did a yoga Zoom class, and I prepared this PowerPoint for today. I went for a little walk. I had some more food. I read and I slept, and I had a wonderful dream. So every day, our lives are filled with all sorts of texts, spoken, written, interactive. We listen, we speak, we read all the time, perhaps more than ever nowadays. And also, of course, the political and the media circus is full of communication. When we switch on the TV, we see press conferences, we see people speaking, interviewing, and so on. In the business world, of course, language is incredibly important as well. To conduct business, what we need to be doing is we need to have a clear message, I guess. We don't necessarily get at what people think, but at least we can make business by interacting with each other. But also, of course, in the field of language and law, the legislature and the jurisdiction are fundamentally linguistic practices. The police as well as the courtroom interaction, the police interviewing, for instance, and the courtroom interaction, are very, very important fields which linguists investigate for more social justice. So the field of forensic linguistics looks at particularly these instances of language and the law. But also in language learning, we have, of course, first language acquisition, where children learn their first language from their parents. Often they learn 2 or 3 languages. But we also have second language acquisition, that is when we later in life then study another language, as well as if you want to become a teacher at one point perhaps, and you want to become a foreign language teacher, then language will be central, of course, to whatever you are doing. And the field of applied linguistics looks at language learning in particular. More important than ever, perhaps, at the moment during the global pandemic, we need professional health communication. We need more research and more investigations into professional health communication. People who are working on the front lines, they need to be able to communicate not only with the patients, but also with their superiors, with politicians, with people, with organizations that might help them to do their job in the way that is best for everyone. But of course, also in the field of the arts, language, as we have seen in Anya's talk, of course, plays a very, very central role in poetry, in performance, in literature, in music, as well as in dance. So we can say that language is an important aspect of all social life. Whether you look at the media, you look at culture, you look at identity, you look at justice, as well as love. Just to see how much relevance a little word like yes can have for a couple who want to commit to each other because they love each other. Of course, the legal structures and the cultural structures that allow certain types of genders and not others to articulate this powerful and legally binding word, yes, are of course the infrastructure of linguistics in all of our social life. It really shows how much language there is around us, even if we just articulate that little word yes in that very significant moment of our life. But not only humans use language, animals use language too. Whales, for instance, communicate through sound waves in very intricate ways. Bees communicate by dancing in a complex waggle run to show their other bee friends where the honey is and where the pollen is. And of course, this is not only important for to understand animal communication for the sake of understanding animal communication, but we know that bees are incredibly important for our ecosystems. So to understand the communication of bees is very, very important to save the planet and to live and to create sustainable environments. But also trees and plants communicate in these, what they call these subterranean, that is underground fungal networks, what is sometimes called the wood wide web. And if you're interested in this kinds of research, then I suggest that you look up the word biosemiotics, which is really another word to say the languages of life forms that are not human. But also in computer communication, of course, language is essential if you want to go into programming or robotics, or if you want to understand algorithms better, or if you want to develop artificial intelligence. Linguistics will be central to whatever you are doing. And perhaps even for extraterrestrial communication, those of you who have watched the film Arrival will know that the protagonist is actually a linguist who is hired by the government to start developing a language to communicate with aliens. And in real life as well, there was an attempt, or there is this plaque out there sent out in 1972 by the American Space Agency, which is sort of a plaque that is put onto a satellite, I believe, which contains all the essential information about human life and life on planet. So for instance, you see a man and a woman here, and you see all sorts of other kind of symbols that supposedly can tell an alien where we are in the galaxy and what the main molecule of our Earth is, namely the H2 molecule, the water molecule, which you can see on the top left hand. So there are attempts to communicate through signs, of course, with all sorts of beings, whether they be plants, whether they be animals, or even aliens. So I think understanding language is important for a number, maybe all professional fields, including those that I have listed here. So to wrap up, social and cultural life and natural life is deeply intertwined with language. In fact, I find it very, very hard to imagine anything that exists without language. But maybe you can help me. What area of life do you think has nothing to do with language? Is there anything where linguistics is irrelevant? And let me end with a quote by a linguist, semiotician, as well as a novelist and a philosopher, Umberto Eco. Umberto Eco says, linguistics is in principle the discipline studying everything which can be used in order to lie. If something cannot be used to tell a lie, conversely, it cannot be used to tell the truth. It cannot, in fact, be used to tell at all. So maybe here we have our first encounter with what is maybe not linguistics. Perhaps I'm confused. Thank you very much for your attention.